The man sitting before you is not the Marco Rubio of the 2014 amnesty bill. The man sitting before you is not the 2016 Marco Rubio that opposed Trump in the Republican primaries. No. This Rubio, who is set to be the new Secretary of State of the United States, third most powerful person in the country, third most powerful person in the world, in one sense, is looking like he wishes not only to abandon the Jeb Bush wing of the Republican Party, but to fully embrace the new MAGA worldview. And he's willing to rewrite history in order to do that. And he does that to an extent here in his opening remarks, which is why we're doing this video. Hey, my name's John Rose. And if you like this content, subscribe, like, all that other stuff, comment for the algorithm. But I really want to talk about MAGA Marco, because the question as we go forward is going to be, is this a flash in the pot? Or is this a real, genuine ideological shift? Because if it's the latter and not the former, we do have a genuine movement happening in the Republican Party. You see it with Governor DeSantis calling a special session to actually fund mass deportations in Florida. You see it with Ted Cruz and his fiery rage and spit due to the immigration crisis. You see it all around, and it's a very strange part of the party that has really locked in on this. But you notice that they have responded to the voter, that they have seen what Trump is capable of doing. They see Trump is capable of larger Hispanic margins than George Bush. And now they have completed the pivot. So I want you guys to listen. Hold as much skepticism towards Marco Rubio as you would like, by the way. I'm not telling you to change your opinion. I'm not telling you to forgive him for trying to pass an amnesty bill. And I'm not telling you to forgive him for the surveillance states. I don't forgive him for that. I very much dislike Marco Rubio for a variety of reasons. But think about the evolution of MAGA Marco, because foreign policy is going to be his domain now. And regardless of what headlines say, it's really hard to imagine Marco doesn't have influence on this administration. So let's give MAGA Marco a shot here and listen to his retelling of world history. All right, so let's go ahead and get started right here. I am playing it a little bit faster just because I want time to ramble, but here you go.
At the end of the Second World War, the United States was, in the words of then Secretary of State, tasked with creating an order, a world order, a free half, as he quote in his quote, out of chaos, without blowing to pieces, without blowing the whole of the world into pieces in the process. And in the decades that followed, that global order served us quite well. Americans' incomes rose and communities flourished. Alliances emerged in the Indo-Pacific and Europe that led to the emergence of stability and democracy and prosperity in these regions.
We've had forever war ever since. Little Marco, keep your hands.
And if you didn't hear that, the protester said we've had forever war ever since. Don't know exactly what he's pissed off about, but as far as heckling goes, pretty based comment.
Back to order. All right, alliances emerged in the Indo-Pacific and in Europe that led to the emergence of stability, democracy, and prosperity, but it also prevented a cataclysmic world war. And ultimately, a wall in Berlin came down, and with it, an evil empire. Out of the triumphalism of the end of the long Cold War emerged a bipartisan consensus. And this consensus was that we had reached the end of history, that all of the nations of the world would now become members of the democratic Western-led community, that a foreign policy that served the national interest could now be replaced by one that served the liberal world order, and that all mankind was now destined to abandon national sovereignty and national identity and would instead become one human family and citizens of the world. This wasn't just a fantasy. We now know it was a dangerous delusion.
Okay, so if you just heard what he said, he just outlined the entire course of neoliberal world history post-World War II, and he has utterly rejected it on its premise. Oh, that is something that is a massive rhetorical shift. You cannot sit here and deny that something significant has changed, either in what he thinks the voter wants to hear or what he genuinely believes. remember, he doesn't actually have to, win an election after this. He's just getting appointed to be Secretary of State. I'm sure he would never have to be a senator ever again if he wanted to. There are so much things he could do with his life with a position that powerful. So it's really a question. Is he trying to sell himself to the Senate? Do they care? Like, why is he going to lose Senate votes if he promotes neoliberal foreign policy? I wouldn't think so. Actually, I would think if I was in Rubio's seat, that would be safer than actually doing anything else. So it's a very interesting pivot, the pro-American, pro-MAGA pivot, that contributing to the global society at the expense of our domestic prosperity is a genuine travesty. So let's keep listening.
Here in America and in many of the advanced economies across the world, an almost religious commitment to free and unfettered trade at the expense of our national economy shrunk the middle class, left the working class in crisis, collapsed our industrial capacity, and has pushed critical supply chains into the hands of adversaries and of rivals. An irrational zeal for maximum freedom of movement of people has resulted in a historic mass migration crisis here in America, but also around the world. It's one that threatens the stability of societies and of governments. Across the West, governments now censor and even prosecute domestic political opponents. Meanwhile, radical jihadists openly march in the streets and sadly drive vehicles into our people.
Okay, so 3 subjects have been brought up. Number 1, he is criticizing the entire model of free trade currently. Now, later in this hearing, Senator Rand Paul actually attacks him over this. Not in a very antagonistic way, but he does attack the idea that we shouldn't be giving infinity prosperity to China and we just give them whatever they want. No, he's saying that we cannot accept free trade in this model. That if we're going to freely trade, well, that also, the concept of free trade is not forced unlimited trade. It's actually picking and choosing who you choose to trade with. You really think about it. If trade is truly free, doesn't that mean you get to choose your friends and your enemies? Doesn't it make more sense if trade is free, that we can freely trade with people with better human rights, that people in countries that don't treat their citizens like slaves? That actually sounds like a really good idea. And it ultimately sounds good to not enfranchise and increase the prosperity of countries that ultimately try to consume, co-opt, coerce, take over the countries around them, and simultaneously try to infect and influence our politics. So this is an incredible shift. That was the first topic. Then he criticized the free movement of people. And that's a very vague concept he's brought up, not just immigration in general, not just illegal immigration. He's criticizing people moving in general. And he says that this has jeopardized the security of many free countries across the world. Wow. And of course, like I said, he's being vague, so it could be interpreted in more of a cringe way and like, oh, well, we need to stop all the illegals and don't worry about the legals, blah, blah, blah. But to me, it sounds like he's criticizing the notion itself, which no matter how you look at it, is a positive thing for us and the movement. And then number 3, he brings up terrorism. He brings up the fact that the persecution of the domestic American at school, at student boards, in religious occupations, that is taking place while we simultaneously allow terrorist attacks to happen inside of our borders. He's showing the flip of the victim and the criminal, where we prosecute the victim and we let the criminal roam free. So this is an amazing pivot on all 3 accounts by Marco Rubio, and it's been like 2 minutes of him talking. Holy crap, let's keep going.
While America far too often continued to prioritize the global order above our core national interests, other nations continue to act the way countries always have.
Las sanciones de Marco Rubio están matando a niños en Nicaragua, Cuba y Venezuela.
Back to order.
I get bilingual protests, which I think is an entry cool.
And did you just hear him? That one sentence that he said when we resumed, that Nations are behaving exactly as they always have, which means that Marco Rubio is accepting that what other countries are doing is the natural thing. Working towards your own ends is the natural thing. Self-sacrificing yourself on the altar of globalism is not only unnatural, but people will take advantage of you for it, which he's going to expound on here.
As you know, that's a first year for us, at least in recent times.
All right.
Healthcare is a human right. Education is a human right. Sanctions against countries.
Back to order.
All right. So while America too often prioritize the global order above our core national interests, other nations continue to act the way nations have always acted and always will, in what they perceive to be their best interest. And instead of folding into the post-Cold War global order, they have manipulated it to serve their interests at the expense of ours. We welcomed the Chinese Communist Party into the global order, and they took advantage of all of its benefits, and they ignored all of its obligations and responsibilities. Instead, they have repressed and lied and cheated and hacked and stolen their way into global superpower status, and they have done so at our expense and at the expense of the people of their own country.
Okay, so the anti-China stuff, it's not that part's not really surprising. Look, Rubio has been pretty anti-China for quite a long time, but the framing is so subtly different. Don't you notice? He's talking about the American person, the American citizen, being actually exploited by this process. Not just us, but actually the Chinese people too, which is, charitable thing. Hey, look, we're harming them and us at the same time. How much horrible of a place could you be in when your foreign policy, your foreign trade, that hurts people abroad and people that are here? There's nothing short of disgusting. There's no way to frame that better. So Rubio is really on point. Also, to the protester, that was the weird third one, I guess. Education is not a human right. That's a thing that you are wanting, that you think is promised to you, and you're construing that as a human right. So please, just get out. We need more of like the first protester. We need the guys who are like, neoliberal Rubio, I know your lies. I know you're lying. You don't believe in MAGA. We need more protesters like that.
In our very own hemisphere, narco-terrorists and dictators and despots take advantage of open borders to drive mass migration, to traffic in women and children, and to flood our communities with deadly fentanyl and violent criminals. In Moscow, in Tehran, in Pyongyang, dictators, rogue states now sow chaos and instability and align with and they fund radical terror groups. And then they hide behind their veto power at the United Nations Security Council or the threats of nuclear war. The post-war global order is not just obsolete, it is now a weapon being used against us. And all this has led to a moment in which we must now confront the single greatest risk of geopolitical instability and of generational global crisis in the lifetime of anyone alive and in this room today.
He is rejecting, he's rejecting and declaring dead post-nationalism, supranationalism, the concept that Canada tried to use for 10 years that destroyed Trudeau's administration. He is attacking, destroying, and declaring dead that very concept. Is this a strange person for us to be hearing this rhetoric from? Yes. Is he doing this because he has to be the right-hand man of Donald Trump? Probably. Is this a genuine ideological shift? That is the most fascinating thing to me about this whole thing. Is this all a play? Is this all bull? Is this real? Is this who Marco Rubio actually is? And if it's not, well, that's going to be the most freaking disappointing thing ever. I actually really like this version of Marco Rubio. I hope this is Marco Rubio for the rest of his life. And if it's not, I mean, that sucks. But, I will be bold. I will declare myself optimistic. I will regret this video in 2 or 3 years when Marco Rubio does something really cringe. But at the end of the day, Rubio, this is the best shit that you've put out ever. like keep going, please.
8 decades later, we are once again called to create a free world out of the chaos. And this will not be easy. And it will be impossible without a strong and a confident America that engages in the world, putting our core national interests once again above all else. Just 4 years ago, I believe we began to see the outlines and the beginnings of what that would look like. During President Trump's first term, American strength was a deterrent to our adversaries, and it gave us leverage in diplomacy. There were no new wars. ISIS was eviscerated, Soleimani was dead, the historic Abraham Accords were born, and Americans were safer as a result. Now, President Trump returns to office with an unmistakable mandate from the voters. They want a strong America engaged in the world, but guided by a clear objective: to promote peace abroad and security and prosperity here at home. That is the promise that President Trump was elected to keep. And if I am confirmed, keeping that promise will be the core mission of the United States Department of State.
Bravo, bravo. I mean, I want to clap. Like, please clap. You know, all you Jeb Bush fans, please clap. Rubio has done the 180. Like, wow. Just wow. And, you know, I think that ultimately, regardless of what you may disagree with in minor issue on Trump's foreign policy, Marco Rubio has totally embraced it. And as a result, because he is embracing it, we know there will be peace abroad. We know that if there are conflicts, that they will be short-term and that we will take care of them, and that we will use our full deterrent force to end them quickly, resoundly, and without shed American blood, God willing. I think that's what everybody wants. We know, and ultimately he defends this position as not isolationism. He defends it as proper deterrence. If America properly deters our adversaries, there is no need for intervention beyond that. The threat of America, regardless of what people that are, you know, hooping and hollering about Yemen and the Middle East and ships and stuff, those people that obsess over America having strategic failures under our weakest president in, you know, like 50 years, I don't care about them. I couldn't care less, because I have an immense amount of optimism in my heart for this administration. And I'm not naive. I'm an old man compared to a lot of you guys, in my late 20s. But ultimately, I feel so much better about this than I do about anything else. This might be the most optimism I have my entire life in politics. And another thing that I'll bring up is, like, man, this is just so much better than if Trump had had a second term consecutively. Because if we were doing a consecutive second Trump term that he barely won Biden over, we would be having people like Rubio deeply trying to influence Trump's policies, thinking it's all a fluke, all this nonsense. But the 4 years of Biden did so much psychological damage to people. COVID did so much psychological damage to people. The bad economy ruined people. I guess all of these events, the crackdown of the government against the American civil liberties that we were born with and that we're entitled to, he gets it. I really think that. And again, I'm going to be so disappointed if this is all wrong. If Rubio has not truly changed, I will be depressed. But it's hard for me to understand why in this Senate confirmation hearing, he wouldn't be catering to the elites standing in front of him instead of the American people. So that's something that you guys can tell me about in the comments. Tell me what your speculation is. Why has Rubio shifted rhetoric so heavily? Otherwise, I'll let this video play out, and then we'll see if there's anything else good, any other golden nuggets in the remainder of this video.
Now, tragically, horrifying atrocities and unimaginable human suffering can be found on virtually every continent. And I am certain that today I will be asked about the array of programs and the activities the Department of State carries out to address them. We are a nation who was founded on the revolutionary truth that all men are created equal, and that our rights come not from man or from government, but from God. And so we will never be indifferent to the suffering of our fellow man. But ultimately, under President Trump, the top priority of the United States Department of State will be the United States. The direction he has given for the conduct of our foreign policy is clear. Every dollar we spend, every program we fund, every policy we pursue must be justified by the answer to one of three questions. Does it make America safer? Does it make America stronger? Or does it make America more prosperous?
Amen! A-fucking-man! Guys, that's it. That's America first. They figured it out. They at least know how to talk America first. We'll see if they can walk America first. But God bless them. They figured it out. They know what we wanted this whole time. There is so much optimism for foreign policy in this country. So much optimism. God bless you. Oh, please be telling the truth.
Under President Trump, the dollars of hardworking American taxpayers will always be spent wisely, and our power will always be yielded prudently and towards what is best for America and Americans before anything and everything else. Prudence in the conduct of foreign policy is not an abandonment of our values. It is the common sense understanding that while we remain the wealthiest and the most powerful nation on the earth, our wealth has never been unlimited, and our power has never been infinite. And placing our core national interest above all else is not isolationism. It is the common sense realization that a foreign policy centered in our national interests is not some outdated relic. Since the emergence of the modern nation state over 2 centuries ago, countries acting based on what they perceive to be their core national interests, that has been the norm, not the exception. And for our country, placing the interest of America and Americans above all else has never been more relevant or more necessary than it is right now. For in the end, how can America promote the cause of peace on earth if it is not first safe at home? What good is America to our allies if it is not strong? And how can America help end the suffering of God's children across the world if it is not first prosperous here at home? I thank you, and I hope I can earn your support, whether it's because you believe I will do a good job or because you want to get rid of me. Thank you.
Either way, the result's the same.
Tears of joy in my eyes. Not actually, but we were getting there. Like, I could feel a little bit of watering in my eyes. Marco, good fucking job, boy. This is MAGA Marco, guys. Like, how do you guys think? Tell me in the comments. What do you guys think of MAGA Marco? What do you think of this little face? What do you think of little Rubio here? Do you guys like MAGA Marco? Tell me what you think in the comments, please. I absolutely love it. How can you not listen to that and think this is the best Secretary of State that we will probably have had in a really, really long time. Wow. Marco. Yeah, no. Again, it's one of those things. It's where he is sweet talking me to the end of the earth, and I can't conceive of really a reality where this doesn't come from some sort of place of genuineness. And yeah, regardless of what kind of skepticism you want to lay over him, definitely still surveillance state Marco. Definitely still, he's probably got some old bones in him of that old Jeb Bush party. He definitely doesn't have a proper understanding of American identity, which is going to be natural for a second-generation immigrant, regardless of whether they're born here or not. He's going to have a twisted perception of what America's supposed to be. Same deal with Vivek. Wow. He got a crash course on how to sweet talk the MAGA voter. And I'm going to applaud him for that at the very least. We're going to have to monitor what he does. We're going to have to monitor what the state does. We're going to have to form our opinions as the administration goes on. But if you are blackpilling after hearing someone like Senator Marco Rubio say stuff like that, you're just out of your fucking mind, bro. Like, that is the sauce. That is the good stuff. And I hope that we spend this time smiling, celebrating, and really cheering on Marco in this moment. Because the longer we do that and the more we send out positive signals to the right rhetoric, the more the other elites will notice and they'll pick up on it. So yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed. I really deeply am interested in what the community thinks about MAGA Marco. So please leave your comments. In a year or two, you might be leaving comments about how this was a terrible, aged like milk. Or maybe it aged like fine wine. Oh God, I hope it ages like fine wine. But yeah, thank you guys so much, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye-bye.